I know, I believe it with every part of my being, that every single one of us was coded in our DNA, in our blueprint, in our pre-birth plan to come here, incarnate into this life at this exact time in history, to be a part of the solution, to be a part of the puzzle. Because if you really step back and look at the world stage and what is happening right now, it is a lot of chaos, and it is a lot of unprocessed trauma that is really inviting huge opportunities for healers and powerful creators to step into the arena and to offer solutions that absolutely can change the trajectory of the human species as we know it. This is a really, really big game that we're playing. And it is so incredibly important for you to play your part, because you are the only one that can do it.
Welcome back, Envisionaries, to the Dream into Being podcast, where mind science, transformational psychology, and magic all merge into one. If you're ready to dream again and transcend the inertia of what you've known, then I invite you to join me, your host and Envisioneer, Kat Divine, in expanding the boundaries of your own Fantasia by remembering that you are the master you've been waiting for.
Welcome back, Envisionaries. This episode is a sneak peek behind the curtains of me just being very honest and very vulnerable and very transparent about my own personal creation experiment. And essentially what that is the entrepreneurial journey and everything that it entails, especially the parts of it that are not super glamorous and that a lot of people, for whatever reason, just don't seem to talk about. So that has actually been a disservice, in my opinion, to all of us who step onto this path, that we don't actually know what to expect. And as I've shared in a previous episode, I think that what's happened is there have been so many overnight, incredible, phenomenal success stories of people in the digital space really blossoming and finding themselves in new realities very, very quickly. And not that that's not possible. Again, I think anything is possible. However, I think the pieces that get left out is maybe some of the backstory of where their actual starting point was, and or some of the skill sets that they had already cultivated. So to us, from the outside in, it really looks like it was just a rags to riches experience for this person. And the downside to that, and this is something that I've experienced myself, is that we see these stories and we think, oh, okay, that could be me. And then we invest a lot of our money and a lot of our time and a lot of our beliefs, essentially putting our power into these stories and finding out the hard way that it's not the full picture. It's not the full reality. So in a lot of ways, I do think it's okay, because I'm very, very grateful that in some ways that I fell for the illusion, because it actually was the doorway. It was the doorway for me to just go ahead and take that leap. So in that sense, I have to thank those people for doing that for me. And then on the back end of the experience, it was a little bit of a shock to the system to invest so much, and then to find out that I wasn't really looking at an overnight experience. I was looking at realistically like a 3 to 5 year runway of really, really diving into so many different pieces of the puzzle to really and truly understand what it was that I was doing and offering, and what I was serving, who I was serving. And not only that, but of course, all of the technical skills, the financial skills, the communication skills. You guys, there's so much to this incredible journey. However, one thing I will say is that it is my favorite journey. It is something that I'm so deeply connected to and so passionate about. And it is something that is without a doubt a part of my dharma and my karmic makeup, is to essentially help anybody who is on that journey for themselves, the creation experiment journey, aka entrepreneurship. And it is a journey that is so near and dear to me because, again, there was just such a long experience, a long journey of kind of suffering along the way. I remember being in my 30s and kind of just wondering if my life was over as far as my career was concerned. That seemed to be the narrative, the social narrative, was that by that time, you should have it all figured out. You should know exactly what it is you're meant to do and that you should be well on your way. And I was so far from that reality that had certain things not crossed my path when they did, that I could see how easy it could be to let go of dreaming of a bigger and better future ahead. So I'll share a couple of those quick inspirations with you before I just kind of deep dive and pull the curtain back and completely expose myself. But what's really cool is I've made peace with all of it. So I carry no shame or embarrassment about these things anymore because they are such beautiful parts of my story. And I know that they serve a really important bridge between myself and those who I am here to serve, which very well might be you who is listening to this right now. So I remember watching this movie called Julie and Julia, and it was just a really cute story about this woman who had started a blog, and she was cooking her way through Julia Child's cookbook. So if you haven't already seen this movie, I recommend it. It's really cute, very fun to watch. But what it does is it allows us to watch the stories of two women simultaneously who were on that same path of finding themselves in their later years in life and not really knowing where it was all going for them. So the bigger expander was, of course, Julia Childs, because she was, as far as I remember, she was in her 50s when she started her career, and we all know what that turned into. So I just remember that planting a seed for me of thinking, okay, it's not too late for me. And you guys, I want to tell you that that is absolutely true. I know I had said that the entrepreneurial journey is a minimum of 3 to 5 years. However, if you really look at the scope of your entire life, it is such a small drop in the bucket of time to invest to really learn who you are and what it is that you want to create and contribute. So don't let that number scare you. The other reason it shouldn't scare you is that during that time period, it is so pleasurable and there's so much to enjoy along the way that you're really not counting the days at all. So that was inspiration number one. And then the other one that was just so incredibly powerful that I will share a lot more when I dive into my personal healing experiment journey was I had seen a documentary of this woman, and wow, I mean, talk about being completely transformed in an instant by witnessing something I had never seen before. And this woman was in a very similar situation to me of being housebound and bedridden for years to the point where she was not physically very functional. I mean, this was a really, really serious case. I think it was MS or something like that. And to my surprise, this woman was an angel sent to me from above because her story completely changed my life and reminded me that we can do it. We can do anything that we set our mind to once we have the inspiration and the vision. So here this woman was really, really suffering from very, very serious health conditions. And yet she had also found a way to completely thrive as an entrepreneur, working from her bed and her laptop. And if I remember correctly, she was some sort of a media producer maybe even doing directing and script writing, something along those lines. But she was completely finding success and thriving even in that situation. And I don't know, it just changed something inside of me, because I had never considered that I could create anything of value from the state that I was in. So I'm sharing that with you guys to preface where we're going next. I'm going to give you my backstory of where I found myself in this journey, and what a roller coaster, and what a special thing it is that we can change our story. It's so exciting to me that with the right pieces of information and inspiration and divine timing and support from the universe, that we can absolutely rewrite our story. And the other piece that I do want to share quickly before I get into all of that is, I think the reason that I am so deeply, deeply connected to this particular journey, and this being a part of my own personal dharma, is I believe it with every part of my being, that every single one of us was coded in our DNA, in our blueprint, in our pre-birth plan to come here, incarnate into this life at this exact time in history, to be a part of the solution, to be a part of the puzzle. Because if you really step back and look at the world stage and what is happening right now, it is a lot of chaos, and it is a lot of unprocessed trauma that is really inviting huge opportunities for healers and powerful creators to step into the arena and to offer solutions that absolutely can change the trajectory of the human species as we know it. This is a really, really big game that we're playing, and it is so incredibly important for you to play your part, because you are the only one that can do it. So we'll circle back and come back to that as a bigger vision towards the end, but I want to go ahead and dive into my story. So one thing that I have noticed about any of us that have very, very specific, very big callings on our life is that we just signed up for a really rough first part of the experience. So a lot of the people that I connect with are just some of the most brilliant, magnetic, powerful humans on earth. And they all seem to carry a very challenging beginning of their story. And of course, I was no exception. So one thing that comes along with that is there is this, and I used to be very, very embarrassed about thinking this, feeling this, and even saying it out loud. So the fact that here I am broadcasting this to the world is pretty awesome. So I had this part of me that just absolutely was rejecting the workforce as we know it. So what I've noticed is that many of us with this really higher connection to a bigger purpose and a bigger calling, we just simply did not and do not tolerate the way that things are. And what I mean is the conditioning, the social programming of, first of all, consumerism, and that there's something wrong with us, there's something broken, and that we need to fix it through purchasing all of these products and services. Yeah, it's just something that I think has gotten a little out of control, but it seems to be the way that they trap us into believing that we need so many material things to be happy. And in exchange, we have to trade all of our life force energy and our attention, which is the number one commodity, into channeling all of our light into building realities for other people. So I don't want to demonize that. It was a part of the natural progression of our economy for things to play out that way. However, any of you that can resonate with this really deep rejection of knowing that you were not made that way, and just really suffering internally, knowing that that was never going to make you happy, then I just want to throw this out as a lifeline that there is a reason for that. And what's interesting is a lot of people that I have connected with over this topic, many of us have actually gone as far as manifesting very significant health challenges, almost as our body's way of rejecting giving our life force to anything that we don't want to do and giving things to people that we don't want to give them to. And so you can see that that's a recipe for disaster if you actually have the belief, thinking that that is required for you to be successful. So I was absolutely stunted by that belief structure of really thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I know that I am not designed to be what it is that I'm being told I need to be successful. So I thought I had no options, truly. And what ended up happening was that I just felt incredibly fearful of the future and so lost right out the gate. So interestingly enough, back in high school, I was just this overachiever, perfectionist, go-getter, president of my classes. I was captain of the basketball team. I would work multiple jobs. I had a fantastic social life. So there was just there's this part of me that was just overcompensating for so much of the fear that I had about the future and not knowing what I wanted to do with my life. In fact, I ended up going into the Air Force when I was 18 years old. And I will say I'm so grateful for that experience. It was very short-lived due to some medical issues. However, I learned a lot about leadership and I learned a lot about camaraderie and teamwork. So I will say, even if there's some aspects in your journey that don't quite make sense along the way, I can guarantee you that they do. And that when you come full circle into realizing what it is you came for, every single thing that you've done up until now was a very valuable piece of the puzzle. So after leaving the military, I came back a very different and unfortunately a very broken person. I won't get into all of the details in this episode of what some of those things were that occurred, but I do remember coming back a different person that people almost didn't recognize. Like there was something that really broke inside of me, I think, in so many ways, because I was planning to go career because I didn't know what else to do. I really had no direction. So I ended up floundering and just kind of getting by on whatever work I could do, like restaurant jobs, bartending. One of my most fun adventures was I got to be a horse wrangler. And, they gave me that title, even though I really wasn't. I was just kind of playing with horses and teaching the Girl Scouts and anyways, doing day camps. It was really fun. So I would do things like that. I would do all kinds of multi-level marketing, trying to start my own thing. I learned a little bit about sales. I did retail jobs, but I never really connected with very much other than my sister, who I'm going to be interviewing here pretty soon. I'm so excited. She really fell in love with media and production. And thank goodness, because she was my gateway and my doorway to looking into that as an opportunity for myself as well. And I will say, I absolutely fell in love with it. I love production days more than I can describe. In fact, if the health issues were not a part of my story, I really think I would have ended up being like a movie producer or movie director, because it is just so much fun. And in fact, that's what I went to school for. So I guess we'll go ahead and fast forward a little bit to that leap. So long story short, I just had a ton of jobs that meant nothing to me and made me feel smaller and smaller and more hopeless, thinking, am I ever going to find any satisfaction in this part of my life? And then in my early 20s, all the way up until a few years ago, actually, I found myself kind of jokingly saying being professionally sick, because that was my reality. I spent a couple decades really diving into that journey, and that had its place as well, which I will share a lot more about in future episodes. However, it was during those years that I think most people do find themselves and most people do figure out what it is that they love. And that's the time period, our 20s and 30s, that we really get to give a lot of our life force to whatever it is that we want to create in our career. So it was really scary to go through those years and have literally zero time on my clock moving me in the direction of my higher purpose. And gosh, that was painful in ways that is hard to describe unless you've been there. And here's what's really interesting, you guys. I am coming to find that even people that have been in the workforce in their 20s and 30s building careers have actually experienced very similar struggles of just feeling so disconnected from what it is that they know they're here to do and finding themselves giving their life force to building something that they're not passionate about. And I don't know if there's anything worse. There's just something about us that is so wired to serve and to help others and to fulfill our purpose and our destiny. It is such a deep part of our spiritual programming that I think this is, again, why it is a topic that I feel so incredibly passionate about, because I'm finding that it is not as impossible as we might think it is. So back in 2015, I did find myself by series of miracles, really getting some support from the universe and getting on disability. And for the first time in a long time, actually having some sense of self where I could sort of take care of myself. Disability is not that much, like usually around 900 to 1,000 a month, maybe more for other people. I'm not exactly sure, but I will say it was a challenge to learn to live on that. And at the same time, wow, am I so incredibly grateful that those programs exist, because it was exactly what I needed to get myself on track. So as soon as my nervous system was feeling a little bit more safe and I was not so focused on survival, and when I say that, it really was a series of just survival tactics to get by and really, really, really challenging experiences, like living with multiple family members, living in situations that were not healthy for me or for the other party, living with relationships that were toxic. And at one point, even getting to the point of homelessness and living in homeless shelters. So I really, really took a deep dive into the darkness of what can happen when we are so off track. And again, I don't regret any of those things, because it developed such deep compassion in my soul about the human experience and what can happen to us when we are so out of alignment. So the most amazing thing happened in 2015. As soon as I got some relief, it was amazing. All I wanted to do was to learn and grow and figure out what it was that I came to this earth to do, because nothing else seemed to bring me to life in the same way. So I was lucky enough to find a program that actually helped me go back to school. And this was a really interesting fork in the road. There was a part of me that was looking into two different options for myself. The first option was looking into becoming a therapist, because I found myself naturally serving that role to friends and family in my life anyways. So I thought, wow, maybe I should just go down this road and learn what there is to learn so that I can make some money doing this thing that I'm already doing. So what was so great about that moment is that I did get a chance to do some research. That was actually part of the program that I thought was so brilliant, is that they had us reaching out to people who were in the industries that we were curious about so that we could find real life examples and get real life feedback from people living that experience. And oh my gosh, was I in for a surprise of my life. I did interview several therapists, and the feedback I got was not what I was expecting. they were not very happy. I'm not saying that all therapists feel this way, just for whatever reason. The ones that I connected with were essentially guiding me towards looking for another career because they said that the energy cost was so high and that it takes a special kind of person to just absorb other people's stories all day long. So that was really incredibly amazing that I got guided to not follow that path. And what I realized is that I still wanted to pursue some aspect of therapy. So I started asking my guides, what is it about that I'm so drawn to? And what I realized was it wasn't the therapy part that I was so curious about. It's the transformational psychology that is involved with the healing process that I was so drawn to. And that is part of my business now. And I just had to take a different road to get there. So just a good reminder that if there's something that you're drawn to, just trusting that there's a reason that you're drawn to it. And that even if the first few doors that you knock on are not quite it, to not give up on it and just to ask yourself, what is it about this thing that I'm so curious about? And then once you find that, just knowing, like, put it on the shelf for a minute because it's going to be a part of your story, guaranteed. So door number 2 for me was to go to school for film school. And again, I was just thinking, gosh, is this the most wise use of my time? And I think the hesitation was, again, the physical challenges of being bedbound for so long. I just knew that I couldn't do the production days the way that I would want to, because sometimes you're on your feet for like 14, 16 hours a day. And if I could do it, I would. I loved it that much. However, I don't know, something in me just said, you know what? Just follow this and see what else you could possibly do in that industry that you might enjoy. So to my surprise, I ended up, and this was at ASU's film program, and it was fantastic. I will say there was so much about it that I will probably use as a structure for my own business, because going back to really understanding that the entrepreneurial journey is a process and it is not an overnight process. And there's so many pieces to that puzzle, you guys, that it truly does take a commitment and so many different teachers and so many different experiences to get to the point where we do feel confident. So I really loved seeing how they broke down a 4-year program and really built us up one step at a time. It was very fascinating to experience. So very grateful for that as a model. And what I ended up really gravitating towards was I really loved editing as a way of storytelling. It is such a creative medium. And then I also really loved directing and producing and writing. So I realized, oh, okay, even though I'm experiencing some limitations physically and can't actually do the physical work of creating everything, I can do so much else behind the scenes, all the pre-production, I can do the post-production. I mean, so it was very exciting to me to find out that there was still a place for me in that universe. And to be completely honest, I do think that down the road in the future, when things are a little bit more stable for me business-wise, that Envisioneer Studios will have a production leg as part of the business, because there's just something so powerful about storytelling through the visual medium that I find to be so transformative. So yes, stay tuned to see where all of that goes, because I know that that is still a huge piece of the puzzle for me. So then about 2.5 years into the program, the most incredible thing happened, very unexpected. And I'm just going to throw this out there, you guys. None of our journeys, especially the entrepreneurial journey, is going to be a linear straight line. I know you guys already know this, but just to encourage you that if things take twists and turns at completely unexpected times, to just trust it. Just know that there is a reason, there is a higher force that is guiding you. that sees the full picture. And there's something so beautiful about just surrendering and trusting that process, because we can't possibly know where this is all going. So I ended up manifesting a massive spiritual awakening in 2018. And when I say massive, it was the kind, and I know that we all have many awakenings throughout our life, many aha moments that help us. However, this one was the kind that stopped me in my tracks and really completely asked me to show up in a very, very different way than I had ever done before, and to really step into a space of surrender and trust, and to completely cut ties and let go of anything that was not resonating with me anymore. And any of you who have been through that experience know that it is not exactly fun and not very comfortable to go through the purging process and the awakening journey initially. I will say I had about 3 months of bliss. So thank goodness they gave me that as a primer of going into this experience, because it got really dark very, very fast. And so I went from this very high to this very deep, dark, long low, the dark night of the soul. And it took me on such an unexpected journey to where, and I think I will just have to make a whole other episode on my awakening, because there was so much to it. But trying to make that long story as short as possible, I ended up being called to go on a 40-day spirit walk out in the woods, like living in a tent, just me and my chihuahua and my car full of things. And I actually let go of everything else. Like, I'm talking everything. I emptied out my bank accounts. I gave away everything that was of value, all my furniture, everything that I had. I don't know, something just told me to let it all go. And the only things that I ended up, still having was whatever would fit in my car. So I really, really got to experience what that process was like. It was so incredibly powerful. And yes, I'm excited to share more on that story in a later episode. But like I said, the dark night of the soul ended up taking me to a deep, dark place that I was not really prepared for. And wow, did it ask me to call on parts of myself that I just didn't know existed. So to keep this story on track, I will just tell you the highlights, but I found myself in a situation physically where all of a sudden I was very, very incapacitated. I couldn't walk for probably about a year and a half. I could barely stand up to feed myself, to take care of myself. And it ended up being so dire that I needed several surgeries, and I needed some huge interventions from healers and medical professionals. And at the time, I didn't have the resources, but what I did have was the skill sets that I had learned in college. And by a series of miracles, as usual, I was able to connect with a really incredible healer and educator and researcher that was kind of the doorway for me to start thinking about health and thinking about my body in such a different way. And I just felt very, very called to figure out a way to work with him. And to my surprise, his services, and they're well worth it, but it's about $4,000 a month. And in my case, my situation was very, very extreme. And that was just what it was going to take. And I remember at that time thinking, how is this going to happen? How am I going to create that kind of resource to get this need met? And that actually was the beginning stages of learning Envisioneering and the power that we possess in our mental faculties, especially our imagination. I am just so connected and so ecstatic to be teaching what I'm teaching now, because of how dramatically it changed my life and so quickly. So just to give you an example, I, at the time, had no income. Like I said, I had given everything away. I had nothing of value other than I had an old Mustang car that was just on its last leg, that I maybe could have gotten $4,000 cash for it if I had sold it back then, which meant, okay, great, maybe I could get 1 month of services, and then what, right? So I had done this amazing practice with a good friend of mine, Nicole, who you guys have already met in my first interview. And she actually shared this beautiful process with me about tapping into the memory portion of our brain and creating new memories. And anyways, that's a whole other story, but we went ahead and did that practice. And then within about 3 days, I was on a plane to Mexico and finding myself having a conversation with this doctor, asking him for help, but not from the place of victimhood, but in a very empowered way of, I need your help and I'm going to find a way to help you. And there was something really magical about that energy exchange where he was so receptive and just said, absolutely, let's do this. Fast forward, we end up kind of finding where were some of the missed opportunities in his business. And this is where it gets so amazing, you guys. I mean, I found myself all of a sudden in this whole new world. I had access to a giant audience of maybe around 1 million people that he had cultivated, that I got to now be a part of his story and help him to serve his audience and his clients. And how incredible that we connected in that way and got both of our needs met. And till this day, we're still working together. But what happened was we were able to figure out what were the pieces of the puzzle that he needed help with. And to be honest, I didn't know what I was doing. And as I'm on this journey and connecting with more entrepreneurs, I am actually finding out that that is the case for all of us, that none of us know what we're doing. And here's why. To be an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to constantly learn new things that you don't know how to do. That's just bottom line. That is the life of an entrepreneur. So we are all constantly guessing and trying new things. So you just have to be an adventurer and somebody who is willing to fail and willing to experiment. And I think that's why that is one of my favorite words, because if we can find a way to take the pressure off of ourselves and just know that we're all doing the best that we can, then we can really have a very different relationship with the experience and make it much more playful, much more fun, much more exciting. And that's what I got to have. It was so cool to go from being this, I don't want to say nobody, but in a way, I had gone through so many years of isolation. I mean, gosh, to the point where I think the only human beings that I had interaction with for a while were my sisters and my parents. And like, I really, really needed to retreat to conserve my energy to make it through that time period, because it was very extremely crucial that I did that at that time. So there I was, all of a sudden having access to somebody who I considered to be a hero, not only being able to serve him and his vision, but also having access to all of his resources. And I would be going and flying to, he has 2 clinics, and I would be flying to these clinics and receiving such incredible holistic healthcare. And in so many ways did those things really start to help pull me out of a very serious nosedive physically. So in the process, not only was I getting to help my body heal, but I was also getting a chance to let my mind have this extraordinary playground of opportunity of really having ideas. And for the first time in my life, having people to offer these ideas to. And it was really amazing. I mean, like I said, I had never done any of this stuff before, but it was just this part of me that was so open and so willing to learning and finding out that it was really just more fun and playful than anything. So I was able to create a membership community for him that I still serve till this day. And I think we have around 4,000 members, which is really incredible. And then I also got to teach myself how to become a podcast producer. And then I got to find out about the whole affiliate marketing and brand sponsorships, and just this whole new universe opened up to me. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is incredible. The technology that we have to put ourselves out there and to create an audience and to serve people is so incredibly abundant that if somebody is willing to do the work and commit to the process of learning all these different pieces to the puzzle, then what I've seen as the support staff from behind the scenes is the amount of freedom and abundance that is possible on the other side is so incredibly profound. And I know that that is the thing that we are all drawn to. I know that is the part of us that is saying yes over and over and over to all these programs of getting ourselves out there as entrepreneurs, thinking that we're going to be an overnight success. And so I want that part of us to stay intact, because that's the dreamer part of us. That is the part of us that gets us to, start growing those wings. But I also want to appeal to the practical side of us that maybe just has never learned what it takes to take an idea into physical form, and the commitment and the consistency and really tapping into all of our mental faculties. And I think that's where I really have something to offer this community as I continue to explore and expand, because I've witnessed in my own journey and in some of the people that I've gotten to serve that there is such a beautiful way of turning the dial, and one step at a time and one piece of the puzzle at a time, reorienting our nervous system and expanding our mind, growing our skill sets, expanding our network, and really coming closer and closer and closer to the part of us that knows what it came here to do. So I just want you to hear all of this with an open mind, knowing that you're on the right path. If you're on this path, you are doing it. You're already doing the hard part. And then to just invite you to maybe give yourself a little bit of grace and a little bit of kindness and love and acceptance and appreciation, because this is not an easy journey. This is probably one of the hardest journeys there is. And at the same time, I truly believe that this is the most important journey that there is, because, again, going back to what we're witnessing on the world stage, there's never been a time that has been in more need of conscious entrepreneurs than right now. And not to get into the whole doom and gloom thing, because that is something that's a rabbit hole I definitely went down, and man, it can be really, really heavy. I think it's worthwhile at least knowing what is going on, but to just do our best to not get lost in it, because it can pull us down into some heavy spaces that, to me, I didn't find very practical or very useful. But one of the things that I did notice that I was attracted to was the conversation around sovereignty and freedom, and what does that look like as a society. And I did actually explore this topic in some interesting ways, and really did look into, if anybody's familiar with, there is a lot of education out there right now talking about that topic. There were some red flags in the process that I saw that I just didn't resonate with, and I won't get into it, but I just saw that the angle that it was being approached at was not for me. And one thing that I did understand very, very quickly in that process, though, was that there was a solution. And that's what I was after. I was really very curious about, okay, I understand we have a lot of problems in this world, and according to some people, we're at the verge of our sixth extinction. Okay, great. Now what? Now, what do we do with that information? And what was so interesting is I would ask that question to a lot of who I thought were experts in that field. And there wasn't a lot of practical solutions, to be honest. And I thought, wow, okay, there needs to be a little bit more attention and energy on the actual solutions and not just the problem. So that's when it really, really clicked for me, was that this is a systemic problem of so many of us giving our power away. And now we're just in a very unique time where we want it back and we want our freedoms back. And yet we have never been educated on what that looks like in very, very practical ways to actually step into a space where we ourselves can be the answer that we seek. You know, that's my tagline for my whole business, because I'm so deeply connected to the idea that we are the master that we've been waiting for. I think there is deep conditioning around a savior complex, and it absolutely drives consumerism, and it allows few to control the many. So I understand the psychology behind it, but I just know that now is the time for many of us that have been doing the work to step off of the sidelines and into the arena and to start to pursue our own vision and our own dreams, because we are such a unique part of this puzzle, and we're the only one that can do what it is that we came to do. So again, that is why I'm just so excited about the path that I'm on now, because I know how many of us are out there. I know how many of us have been really watching and listening and following the experts, and have really been going through massive layers of growth and doing a lot of purging and a lot of healing. And now there is this big giant door that's opening for so many of us to just say yes and take the next step. And I also recognize how scary that is, especially when we don't know what the next step is. So even though I often still ask myself, who is it that I serve and what is it that I offer them? The piece that keeps coming back to me over and over and over is conscious entrepreneurs. There's something about me that's very connected to serving other leaders and helping them to serve in whatever space that they're called. Part of the ways that I have been doing that, and again, in the spirit of experimentation, I have spent the last 2 years hosting multiple beta containers and giving myself the opportunity to just learn all of the pieces. Because when I say there's a lot to learn, I don't even know if there's a way to quite do that justice until you're in the game. But there's, for a good example is the money part, right? So I even did an abundance experiment because it was a part of my story that was changing so quickly. And I didn't really have any grounded understanding of what to do with abundance once I received it. And so that's another layer, is like the financial part. How do you speak that language? How do you become a good steward of whatever it is that you're receiving? Because of course, that's the end goal here, right? As an entrepreneur, not only do we want to serve, but we also want to thrive, and we also want to take care of ourselves, and we also want our businesses to grow and expand. And all of that requires some level of financial literacy. So that's just literally, that's one piece of that pie. And then you're looking at the communication part and the marketing part. And then you're looking at the technological and the websites and the emails and how do you connect everything. And then above and beyond that, you're looking at your products and your services and how do you create your brand. So yeah, I will say it's just such an incredible adventure, but wow, what a worthwhile one. It is one that I hope more and more and more people will say yes to, because it is so worth it. I can't imagine living my life and not chasing this dream. It is so much fun. So that's just a little recap of what my life has been like around this specific topic. I'm sure there's a lot of pieces that I missed that will come up in other episodes along the way. However, just to give you guys some encouragement that if you find yourself in a space of just intolerance to giving your life force and dedicating it to building something that you're not passionate about, or giving your time and energy to people that you're not connected with and you don't want to give it to just consider that there is another option. I am not recommending that you jump ship and you completely change your life in an instant. I don't actually think that's the wisest way to do it. It can be the right thing for some people. However, I have found that looking at all of this from the perspective of, okay, this journey is going to be a 3 to 5 year journey at the minimum, depending on where you're starting from. And just really looking at it through that lens of how can I start to add some new elements and some new pieces to this game so that at least I'm moving my life in the right trajectory towards an end goal, which is something that is going to light up my spirit. So gosh, after all of that, I wish that I had something to point you guys to as far as community support right now. It is something that is in the works, most likely next year. Like I said, I am still working full time. I am still doing everything that I need to be responsible and take care of myself while building my business on the side, and also launching this podcast and doing a beta experiment right now. So it is just going to be a slow burn. It is what it is. However, I will say it has been one of the greatest joys of my life the last few years to witness what is possible when we just say yes and we go all in and we commit to some future vision of ourselves that we know is what we signed up for. So definitely stay tuned. I know that my own story and adventure is just going to get more and more exciting, and I will have lots of opportunities to bring you into the fold and introduce you to more and more community, like-minded community of people that are on the same journey. And, you know, why not help each other? Why not give each other as much encouragement and love and support and help along the way? Because although it is the most worthwhile journey, it is such a tough one at times, and we need each other. You do not have to go at this alone. So just stay tuned to some of the coming episodes. I'm going to be interviewing, like I said, my sister, who, wow, she's light years ahead of me on her journey and was the inspiration for me to go ahead and say yes to this path. So just so grateful that I had somebody in my life to open that door for me, and have actually been witness to so many entrepreneurs along the way. And thank goodness for them. I really, really believe that that is going to be what brings us into the golden age, is more and more conscious entrepreneurs making a difference and fulfilling their purpose and their calling. And if you're listening to this episode right now, I would highly imagine that that is you. Okay, I am going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for listening again and sharing my story with me. Hopefully there were some parts of it that you connected with and hopefully inspired you to continue on this path, because we need you. You are so important. You are so valuable. And I cannot wait to meet you along the way. And before I close, if there is anybody listening to this that has had a transformation around any of the experiments that we cover, whether that be abundance, manifestation, healing, connection, creation, or kindness, then I really invite you to reach out to me. You can find my email in the description box below, and just let me know what your transformation was. And I would love to interview you on the show, because that is the most powerful resource that I have found in my journey, is for me to witness myself and see myself in the stories of others. So that is what the show is all about, is to give you behind the scenes look at others who may be on the path just a few steps ahead or side by side to encourage you that you are on the right track. Otherwise, I am sending you all so much love and abundance and blessings ahead, and cheers to hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of us conscious entrepreneurs stepping into that arena and truly fulfilling our purpose and our calling together and changing and rewriting history as we know it. I'll see you guys in the next episode.